Going on to Jerome's. So last night, in a quasi-surprise, but also not really, the Vikings parted ways with veteran running back Alexander Mattison, saved $3.35 million in cap space, and just didn't work out. And the Vikings, in the last couple of off seasons, have shed a number of veteran contracts, including Eric Kendricks, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook. They let Patrick Peterson go. They let Dalvin Tomlinson go. They cut Anthony Barr 2 off seasons ago. Then they brought him back. Last year was weird. But the Vikings are doing it again. And also, if you think about it, if Daniil leaves in free agency, if Kirk leaves, if they do something with Harrison, the Vikings suddenly become one of the youngest teams in the league. And that's exactly what Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell have been going for as they've been going through this competitive rebuild. But, with Mattison, I don't think that they're done. I think that there are still several more veteran moves that Kwesi can make as the Vikings look to free up cap space and extend Justin Jefferson and extend maybe Daniil Hunter or spend a big in free agency, Justin Matabuke one time, or bring back Cousins for one last ride. Who knows? But here are a few more Vikings veterans who could be on the chopping block. Now, there's a couple that are no-brainers. First up is, yes, we know, Garrett Bradbury. So Bradbury, actually, all right, so Bradbury turns 29 in June. That's close enough, which is basically 30. Beep, bop, 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 boop with math. The Vikings can save around $2.5 million in cap space if they cut him June 1st. They can save almost $5 million if they make him a post-June 1st designation. But there's a couple things here. Now, Bradbury has improved greatly the last 2 years under Chris Cooper and the new regime. Yes, he was terrible the first 3 years of his career, but last season, 22 pressures, 3 sacks, 5 penalties, and he's had back injuries which are correlated in each of the last 2 years that have cost him time. Also, Bradbury's back injury during the 2022 run probably cost them the playoff game. As when he came back, he just wasn't the same, and he had been greatly improved that year. But again, this is a spot where don't let good be the enemy of great. And I know I'm gonna get my thinking that, hey, Cousins should be back for one more year thrown in my face as like, oh, you said don't let good be the enemy of great. But think of how good Cousins can be if he doesn't have his borderline 300-pound center shot put it into his lap several times a game. And it's been an issue for the last couple of years. And I understand that the Vikings are the haven of Mama, I can change him. And he has gotten better with Chris Cooper. But at a certain point, the cap isn't worth it, as well as the age isn't worth it, as well as the injuries aren't worth it. So I think the Vikings could and should find ways to improve the center position, either in free agency, Connor Williams one time, or the draft, Jackson Powers Johnson, or Graham Barton, or Zach Frazier, or Bo Limmer, or whoever, or the Michigan dude. The Vikings can improve themselves at the center position. Hell, Reiser could play center too. But yeah, I think that at minimum, it's pay cut or cut ultimatum with Garrett Bradbury. Next up, number 2. Dean Lowry. This is done. This should be done. This should just be announced. Dean Lowry, who came over from Green Bay last year, signed a 2-year deal, saved $2.08 million if they cut him. Last year just was not good. Lowry is brought in. It's like, okay, maybe he brings a little bit of pass rush. Maybe he's solid against the run, plays some 4-tech, 5-tech, but just wasn't good. Played in 9 games before he got injured, 4 starts, only 237 snaps, which is not a lot, and 4 pressures, which is also not a lot. 0 goose egg D'Angelo Russell sacks, which is also not a lot, and 3 missed tackles, which is a lot. Considering how much he played. So, that one's done. That one's no discussion, no debate. Just cut him and move on. Also, the Vikings currently have around $36 million in cap space, so that certainly would help. But this one kind of hurts. This one hurts. We know what it is, right? So, Harrison Smith. So, Harrison is 35. Harrison might retire. Harrison's not going to have all the pomp and circumstance, and I think when Harrison retires, he's just going to be like, I'm out. Deuces. May not even have like a social media tweet or have the team do a press release or anything like that. But Harrison played well last year in the Flores regime. Also, Harrison low-key played really good in the Donashell defense as well. It was playing much more off the line, playing a lot more free safety, had 5 interceptions. I mean, he was good in 2022. He was really good in 2023, given his age on a curve. He had 0 interceptions, but he was playing down near the box most of the time. 93 tackles, 3 sacks, 3 passes broken up, 3 forced fumbles, as well as 78.8 quarterback rating, which was his best rating in the last 3 years. So Harrison can still play if he wants to. He talked about it. He's got his shoulder banged up towards the end of the year, but he is 35, and I don't know, the Vikings are at a crossroads. But either way, something has to be done. If Harrison is back, it will have to be at a substantial pay cut, just like last season. So lowering his 11 point, because the Vikings, he has around a $19.2 million cap charge. The Vikings can save around 11.38 if they just cut him, or if Harrison retires, or could the Vikings work out a trade with Dallas where he goes to Dallas, reunites with Zimmer, but on a modified contract, and the Vikings pick up, I don't know, like a late day 3 selection or like a pick swap or something? Who knows? Who knows, man? But yeah, that one would hurt. But if the Vikings do make those 3 moves, cutting Bradbury, cutting Lowry, cutting or Harrison retires, the Vikings would add another $16 million in cap space to the 2024 books. But here's a couple more. So you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. So 3 that I do not agree with, but if they happen, so 4 through 6. So Byron Murphy. So I understand what you're saying. Why would you cut your best cornerback? Especially since you just signed him last offseason. Fully understand. And Murphy's injury, I think, was one of the big reasons why the Vikings defense fell apart the last 3 games. Murph is 26. Has had a history of back injuries. The Vikings could save $5.3 million if they do cut him with 1 year remaining on his deal. But I mean, last year Murph was good, but also was he only good compared to the rest of the cornerbacks besides Mekhi Blackman? But he allowed 6 touchdowns in coverage, a 102 quarterback rating, 18 missed tackles, and a 58.2 PFF coverage grade. So in a vacuum, like all that is mid. But you do have to take into account what was going on with that defense. But I do like Murphy. Could he be a pay cut or cut candidate? Yes, I could certainly see that. Harrison Phillips is different. So Harrison Phillips, he is 28, but the Vikings could save $6.5 million by moving on. I don't want them to. He was by far their best defensive lineman on the interior last year. 92 tackles. Led all defensive interiors in the NFL. But even with Harrison Phillips playing hero ball out there, like, the Vikings were still soft in the middle. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't get a consistent interior pass rush. Harrison Phillips only had 2 tackles for loss, had 11 missed tackles. So, I don't know. Like, is it a spot where the Vikings could add nose in the draft, Tavondre Sweat, etc. But is it a spot where the Vikings make a big-time move for a younger defensive tackle like Christian Wilkins, if he has a franchise tag, or Justin Matabuke of the Ravens, or something of that ilk? Or do they make a big-time move for Chris Jones? And if they do that, would they use the cap savings from Harrison, $6.5 million, and also the other Harrison, to facilitate that contract? Maybe. Or does Harrison Phillips have some trade value? It's a possibility, too. So I would prefer to keep him, but I would understand if it's a financial thing or if it's a spot where we can improve by bringing in someone who's a little bit better than Harrison Phillips, but it's going to be costly in free agency. And then King Kene, I mean, it's minimal. I mean, King Kene barely factors into the top 51, but the Vikings would save $1.055 million. And it's a spot more where I don't know if Kene's ever going to be like a true blue NFL running back. Career 27 carries, 88 yards, 0 touchdowns, 3.3 yards per carry. He's a physical freak, don't get me wrong, but is there a reason why beyond Breece Hall and David Montgomery he didn't get the time of day at Iowa State? And also with the kickoff rules being really reined in and neutered, like his value to the roster goes down precipitously. So, I mean, it could be a spot where it's less about the money. I'm just more about the roster spot, and the Vikings look to refresh that running back room completely. But who knows? But if all 6 of these moves went down, all pre-June 1st cuts, the Vikings would save just south of $29 million on top of the $36 million that they have. So again, I'm not advocating for some of these moves, but if they go down, I wouldn't necessarily raise an eyebrow. as Kwesi continues to play Moneyball with this rooster. But your thoughts are thoughts. More Vikings veterans that could hit the chopping block, let us know in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support the work, put a little something in the Venmo. But until next time, Skol, production value.